Now at the primary site, that could either be someone who's hosting the servers, or that could be the actual customer site, but it's where the actual data is sitting. So what we're going to do when you guys identify a customer that might be looking at this type of solution is we're going to work with you to talk about how much data do they have. How frequently do they want to protect that data? Once a day, twice a day, 4 times a day? How long do they want to retain that data? In case of a local failure, how many resources do they need to be able to run on top of our appliance? How much RAM and CPU? And the same thing for the cloud side of the appliance. So we're going to custom size this appliance that goes on site and the one that goes in the cloud for each one of your customer environments. Now again, the appliances are included in this, so regardless of what model appliance we give to your customers, that doesn't change the bill. Of course, we're going to give them one that is more than sufficient to handle the next 3 years. Ideally, we want to have them be at least used for 3 years before we switch out the hardware. Now, if something drastically changes, they merge, we can definitely work with you, and we aren't limited to that. But what our appliance on-prem does is it takes these physical and virtual servers, it backs them up, it dedupes them, it encrypts that data, so it's stored encrypted on our appliance. That gives you the ability to spin up servers on site. So if the domain controller crashes and they need to bring up a domain controller real quick so they can continue getting their work done, we can run that off our appliance, and then once we're done, we could restore it back from the spun up server back to the physical or virtual environment it came from. Now, another great part of our solution is we include the replication and that cloud side appliance. So we're going to replicate it encrypted, we're going to store it in the cloud encrypted, and we give you the same ability to boot up those servers in the cloud. So we'll go over a couple different scenarios today, 3 different scenarios of where, I think our appliance really solves a need that a lot of customers have. Now, one thing that is important to mention, Kelly said, we've got the 3 different solutions. We've got the endpoint solution, which is a direct-to-cloud. We've got this one, which is the appliance-to-cloud, and then we've got a cloud-to-cloud solution. All of those are managed through this Infrascale Dashboard. This dashboard has integration with ConnectWise and AutoTask. So if you have one of those kind of systems, we can use this to fill data in there, to do ticketing and billing and all that kind of stuff. But this is one centralized place for you to manage all your customers, see all your reporting, and then you can drill down to individual customers if you want to see what's going on in one environment. So the first thing I thought about when I was thinking about what would be interesting to talk to you guys about is the process of onboarding a customer. I, like Kelly, I was at my previous career for 18 years at a large enterprise backup vendor. I left there and came here, and they handed me an appliance on my first day, and they said, all right, go get this set up. So I came home, and I took the appliance. It's roughly the size of a toaster out of its box, put it on my network, put an IP in it, got it up and running. And, I was just amazed at how simple it was. It took about 45 minutes with no instructions for me to be able to get it up, get it configured, have it backing up Hyper-V, VMware in a physical box. And then within a couple of days, it had replicated that data to the cloud, and I could boot in the cloud. So I'd like to show you guys a little bit about what that process is when you go in and you first want to set up the box and you want to get some clients configured. So this is what the interface for the DRaaS solution looks like. So here we can simply see that these are all the clients that we've got configured. How do we configure those clients? Well, if they're VMware shop, we can simply go to the VMware tab. We can say add a connection. Right here we would type in the name of the vCenter, the ESX host that we want to protect. That's going to connect, and it's going to show you all the machines in that environment. So right here we can see all these different machines. Some of them are registered, some are not. So what that simply means is a registered machine is a machine that we're backing up and we're protecting. So the most important server right here, that's something you might want to register and back up, but something like my development server, I don't need to back that up. I don't need to replicate that. That's just kind of an environment I play around in. So with VMware, we don't have to install any clients or anything. Just simply put in your credentials. Hyper-V is pretty much the same with a little twist because it's Windows, so we got to make it a little bit different. You would actually install our Windows client on the Hyper-V server. So with that running on the server, we can then see all the virtual machines that are running on there, and we can protect those, again, natively using Hyper-V's APIs and backup utilities. So again, here you just say add connection. You'd pick the Windows server that is the Hyper-V server, and then it would go out and find them all. Now with these, not only when you connect can you decide to register or unregistered machines, you can also say, hey, when a new machine appears in this environment, what behavior do you want it to do? Do you want it to ignore it, or do you want it to back it up? I always recommend backing it up. It's better to have data you don't need than to not have data you do need. You can always unregister it later if you find out it's something that you don't need to protect, but I do like to err on the side of protecting everything. Now, what about physical servers? Physical servers are nice and easy to set up too. Here's all the different clients we have for physical servers. You know, we support most of the popular flavors of Linux, of Microsoft Windows. Anything in this area, we can boot on our appliance and boot in the cloud. Some of these other ones out here, like Mac OS, Novell, these Unix machines, we can back up and recover their data, but we can't boot those actual environments on top of our appliance. Now with scheduling, you know, where I was before, scheduling was kind of basic. You would set up a schedule for your fulls and your incrementals, and that was pretty much about it. Here, we give you a lot more functionality and flexibility. So here's the most basic. I want to do a full backup every day at 1. So where we can all the way drill out and say, all right, during these different parts of the year, I want my backups to run in these different ways. So maybe you guys shut down for a period during the holidays, where you can make it so that your backups match what you guys are actually doing. So that's how easy it is to set up and bring in some clients and give them a default schedule and kind of get things backing up again. With no training, no one walking me through it, I was able to get this up and running in about 45 minutes. So it's a nice, easy solution to navigate. Now the next scenario, and this is something that, you know, the previous company I came from didn't even offer, right? If we were going to back up stuff and recover it, we had to do it the old way. We had to actually go out there and rebuild that server or restore that full VM. So in case you have a local failure, right? A local failure, maybe a server's hard drive crashed, maybe a VM got corrupted, or a machine got hit with ransomware. You know, what's the best way to recover from that? Now again, traditionally when you would do this recovery, you'd come in and you'd say, all right, well, I need to restore it. I need to restore that entire machine, or I need to recover that machine, or I need to get those individual files back. But with our solution, we offer something that's a lot easier and a lot quicker to get to the resolution that you need. So again, say my domain controller crashed. I can just go in here and go to the boot tab, go look at the machines that I have available to boot, find my domain controller, right-click and tell it I want to go ahead and boot it up. Here it's going to give me a list of all the successful backups that I have. So I can choose from any of those. You know, if it did get hit with ransomware or something and we need to roll back to the first, we can do that. Next thing it's going to say is, all right, well, what do we want to name that machine? So I want to give it a different name just so that I know which one it is and that I can delete it when this demo is over. We tell it how much memory we want to give it, how many processors. Here we have some options on networking. We can boot it with no network, which is what I'm going to do because my domain controller is up and working. We could boot it on a bridge network with 0, which basically means it's going to bring it onto our production network. So that's the choice you would do if the domain controller was down. That way everything would just start seeing this machine just like it was the original, and everything would start working again. And then we can also do a private subnet. So where we would use that is maybe we've got a web server and a SQL server and they work together. So we need to boot multiple machines that can talk to each other, but we still don't want them on our public network. So then we would put them on that private subnet. So this one, I'm just going to say no network, and then we're going to go ahead and tell it to boot up. Now what it's doing right now, and we can see with this little icon, is it's preparing the disk to turn this machine on. It's injecting our drivers into that machine so that it can start it up and it has all the appropriate drivers to run on our hypervisor. And then it's going to power it on. So once it powers it on, we're going to see something like this Windows 10 client here that I booted up a little bit earlier. So we get a screen preview of what's going on with the client. Copy the password, we can click on this, it'll bring us over and let us actually attach to that client. So now we are connected to that box, even though we didn't give it networking. We can go in there, we can log in, we can test stuff. Maybe we just needed to recover some files, we could go in this way and get them, or we could restore them through the interface, just a couple of files. But this gives you a really easy way, and again, this is where that 15-minute guarantee is, right? That we can get a machine up and booted in your environment within 15 minutes. And very similarly, this is how the cloud side operates, but we'll show that here in a second. Now let's go ahead and go over the last scenario that I wanted to talk about. So the last scenario is booting in the cloud. Well, when would we boot locally versus in the cloud? Locally is if a machine or two has a problem. If we're going to the cloud, maybe we have something like this. I live in Florida, and we have hurricanes coming for us all the time. And a lot of our customers now have gotten into the habit of, once that track starts to calm down and looks like it's going to hit Florida, to go ahead and fail their data over to another location just in case they lose power or something happens. So you can either, ahead of the schedule, go ahead and boot things up in the cloud, or you could do quarterly or yearly disaster recovery tests, or if you hit by an unexpected disaster, at that moment, you could bring things up in the cloud. So let's go ahead and look at what booting in the cloud looks like. So you always have access to your cloud side. You never have to call and ask for permission or schedule a time to test or anything. You can always get to this interface, your cloud side. When it comes into here, the first thing it's going to bring you to is the Jobs tab. And the reason why it brings you to the Jobs tab is because that's the most important thing, right? So we can see all the successful replicated jobs that we have up here. On the Clients tab, we can see all the clients whose backups we have up here that we're protecting. And then when we go over to the Boot tab, it's very similar to the on-prem appliance where we see all the machines that we can boot here in the cloud. But one thing is different. We have an extra tab here called Orchestration. Now, orchestration at the company I came from was actually a separate product entirely you had to pay for. And here it's included. Now, what's great about orchestration is I was actually in New York for 9/11 and helped a couple of my previous employers' major clients come back from complete data center losses, right? So we're, back in the day, we actually had run books and we're flipping through the binders and we're trying to figure out who we need to call and what order to bring everything up. And so what we allow you to do is build a digital run book. So if we look right here, we can see I'm going to boot up my domain controller. Then I'm going to wait for that to come online. Then I'm going to boot up my file server that I call non-store. And then I'm going to wait for that to come online. Then I'm going to boot up my web clients. So now, at the time of the disaster when everything's frantic, you don't have to think about anything. You can just come in here and click the run button, and that's going to start everything up for you in the right order, wait for everything. You can come in here and you could set up a DR LAN. So you could go ahead and test this. A lot of partners will actually help their customers do those quarterly tests. Now, what if you go to your customer and they say, all right, well, after we bring online these web servers, we want to test them. Say, all right, well, let's go ahead and add that in. We'll go ahead and add a group down here. We'll say, all right, Windows 10 client. We'll give them a Windows 7 client.
399 for the toll-free number.
Maybe we'll name that clients.
Because we don't want to buy
and now we've added another tier to this orchestration. So it's really simple to set up. The hardest part of this is actually to sit down and figure out what applications depend on which applications and what order they need to start in. If your customer's already got a really good disaster recovery plan, it's really easy to come here, drag and drop, and set everything up. But usually a lot of the work in this is actually figuring out, okay, well, what is the order that we need to boot things in? Now, one of the things I always get asked is, all right, Chris, so we booted in the cloud, and we need to come back on-prem. And if they've used one of our competitors' products, they're asking because they're scared of having to go through that process again. Now, we have made it a very automated process. It's not automatic, it's automated. So you would shut down this virtual machine that you had running in the cloud, and then you would say, create a backup job. And what that's going to do is it's going to back up all the blocks that have changed since it got to the cloud. So again, only the differences. We're still doing that global dedo. Now, once that backup job is completed, it's going to appear over here in your jobs list. Now, once it's in your jobs list, you just highlight that backup job, and you say push back to primary. So what that's going to do is replicate it backwards back onto the primary appliance, and then you would go to that primary appliance, and when you go to do your restore, you'd be able to pick from that. Now, there's one last thing that I want to kind of show before. Go ahead. What was that, Kelly? So there's one last thing I want to show before we open it up for questions, and that's just another kind of key differentiator with us is the way that we do the replication. So you don't have to replicate everything. You can pick and choose what you want to replicate, and you can choose how long you want to keep it on-prem and how long you want to keep it in the cloud. Typically, we recommend keeping about 4 weeks worth of backups on-prem and keeping 6 months a year, whatever your SLA is, in the cloud. And we also do offer a way to do long-term retention storage if you need to. But this is kind of one of the things that blows me away. Because we're doing block-level replication and compression, I have a 30 megabit pipe from my cable modem. However, I have an effective throughput of 46 gigabits. So that's definitely, you know, really efficient. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions and answers.
Yeah, this is Blair. I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
So the first question is, now you didn't talk about this, and it's probably the wrong webinar, but one of the things that we do most often with our backup devices currently is restoring a single file or folder. You know, we'll get a client call us, hey, I accidentally deleted this, or whatever. I need this file or this folder from yesterday or earlier today. And one of the newer solutions, why we're looking at you guys, is our newer solution is in providing a lot of features that we use. And one of them is with data, which is the one we are moving away from, unfortunately. We're able to just mount that via SMB and then from the client's computer navigate to it. And the reason that's helpful is, first of all, it makes the data restore, you know, copy paste kind of easy. But sometimes when that client doesn't really know where it was or maybe not sure what file they need, we can actually just navigate to it on their computer with them and they can see it live in File Explorer. Can we do SMB restores from this local device?
So we don't currently offer the ability to do SMB restores. We do give you a very easy way to do granular restores, regardless of if it's physical or virtual, where you can browse the directory structure, kind of like Internet Explorer, and you can actually click and download the file and then email it to them. Or you could even browse that restore from a browser on their machine, so they can kind of navigate it with you to be able to bring those files back locally. So we have an easy give it, run a sysprep and give it a different IP, and then you could browse the file share. So there would be a way to make it happen, but there isn't an easy one button, make this a file share so they can recover the file.
And, you know, that's not, you know, it sounds quite a bit easier than you know, Continuity 247 is the one that doesn't allow us to do that, but they also don't offer another easy solution. It's just really painful. So my next question is, you were talking about adding VMware host to it, you know, just typing in the credentials. What about in a situation like a data center where we don't have direct access to the ESXi host?
Okay, so if you can't get to the if you can't get to the VMware host directly, then you would need to install an agent on those guests, and we would back them up and protect them as if they're physical, but that would still give you the ability to boot them here and on the cloud.
And have you guys had any problems restoring bare metal or anything like that with instances where you don't have direct access to the ESXi?
No, because we're just going to treat it just like a physical host. So, you know, if it's backed up through VMware and you do the restore, we can actually create the VM and fill it with all the data. So you don't even have to log into VMware to do anything. Where if you do it as a physical host, you'd have to go into VMware, create the container for it, and then we can fill it with the information that was there. Okay. So it's not as slick if we don't have direct API access, but it's definitely very doable, and it's not something people aren't doing. Some people actually like to back things up that way anyways because they're used to it. Sure. And even like with our Nutanix solution, we would treat those as physical boxes because we don't quite have that Nutanix full integration yet.
Okay, and my last question, I'm sorry to take up so much time, but if we were, we have, you know, our contract state, we have to keep backup data for so long.
Into our device. So you would keep that data device around as that data expired. But as far as, being able to easily move that over, There are services out there that do that where they basically restore data and back it back up. So that would be an option, but that's definitely a time-consuming way to do things.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Hey, Chris. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry about that. That has never happened on a call ever, and of course it would happen on this while we're sharing the screen. So sorry, everybody. I got kicked out. I was having a hard time coming back in. So hey, at least we're not demoing a GoToMeeting because we have a little blip there. Chris, were you guys able to cover? Did any questions come through to the chat to you? Because I did get a few.
Yeah, we had a couple of good questions there.
Oh, good.
And it actually does look like we are about to run out of time, unfortunately.
Yeah, excellent. So, guys, we've got a minute left. If you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, I heard someone asking a question when I came back on. Thank you so much. But yeah, go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like and ask Chris your question.
And while we're waiting for someone to pop in there, again, just kind of going over some of the major differentiators, the global dedupe. We don't charge no matter how long you run in our cloud. We don't charge you for the appliance. We don't charge you for any of the software agents. So as far as on a budgeting solution, it's very easy to budget. It's just how many protected terabytes do they have that they need to back up. So it's really easy to quote and really easy to plan for how much it's going to be month to month. With that, if we don't have any questions, do we want to wrap it up, Kelly?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's wrap it up. Team, thank you so much for the time today. We really, really appreciate it. I will send out everybody a follow-up this afternoon and a copy of the recording in case someone on your team wanted to join and they couldn't. So thanks so much again. We really appreciate the time. Have a great day.